I cannot hear you. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear us now?
Hello.
Okay.
Let's start this again.
Okay. Refresh. Welcome to the Holistic Kids Show. My name is Zane.
My name is Abdullah.
And my name is Imad.
We're the Holistic Kids here to educate us kids from the inside out. According to the CDC, 1 in 9 kids have ADHD, and around 6 in 10 U.S. kids also have ADHD and have at least one other mental, emotional, or behavioral condition. 1 in
Yeah,
that is
1 in
insane.
9 is insane. That is a lot of kids that are suffering. So what can we do about that? And can someone with ADHD still thrive?
You're right. That's a lot of kids with ADHD, and most are given meds to help with it. But we need a better option. That's why we have the global expert in ADHD here to speak to us today, Miss Dana Kay. Miss Dana Kay is a board-certified holistic health and nutrition practitioner and a 2 times best-selling author from the ADHD Thrive Institute. Thank you so much again, Miss Dana, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here because I've never actually had an interview with kids before. And so, as we were just saying, when you guys came on, I was so excited to see the 3 brothers sitting together because I've got 2 boys and it just warms my heart. So thank you for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure.
So we would love to learn your story.
Yeah, no, well, believe it or not, I wasn't always a health expert. I actually used to work in numbers, like, doing accounting calculations all day long. But, something happened that for me just changed everything. And my son, my older son, his name's Oliver, he started to have like these big emotional meltdowns, and his energy was always way higher than other kids, and he couldn't sit still, and it made it hard for him to focus, and it made me feel like something wasn't right. And the doctors told us that my son had ADHD, which is what you just introduced and told everyone about, and gave him some medication, just like you were talking about. And at first I was like, yay, we're finally getting the help that we need. But after a while, the medication just didn't seem to help as much anymore, and even actually started making things worse. And the doctor kept giving us more medication, but nothing was working. And that's when I knew that I had to try something different. And I really started to learn all about food and how it affects the body and the brain, and how I found out that certain foods can make ADHD symptoms worse, and certain things that you guys have probably talked so much about on this podcast in our environment can make ADHD symptoms worse. So I changed what my son was eating, and guess what?
What?
It worked. And my son started doing so much better. He doesn't need any medication anymore. He started high school this year. He's 14 and a half. He's happy. He's doing great in high school. And we just feel so much more calmer and at peace at home. And that's why I'm just so excited to help other kids like him and other families feel better as well.
Let's start from the beginning. What exactly is ADHD and how is it different from ADD?
Well, that's a really, really good question. Interestingly, they actually don't call it ADD anymore. But just to explain what it means is ADHD stands for Attention Deficit hyperactivity disorder. And it's something that makes it harder for some kids to sort of sit still, just like you guys are doing now. You're sitting so still and beautiful and paying attention. I mean, it makes it harder for some kids to pay attention. And, you know, as you said, it's pretty common. There are a lot of kids. I think there's 6 million in the United States that have been diagnosed with ADHD. But every kid with ADHD can be a little bit different. You know, for some kids, they might fidget a lot or feel like they can't stop moving. Others might find it super tricky to focus on what a teacher's saying or following instructions. And so when you say ADD, attention deficit disorder, that's usually that category where they can't focus on what the teacher's saying. Whereas ADHD is more of the kids that are fidgeting or hyperactive or can't sit still. Now, my son used to have a lot of energy and he couldn't sit still, and he would get really upset over things that seemed so small, which, you know, made our family always feel like we were just waiting on, you know, what was going to set him off next time. And, you know, it can show up in a lot of ways, like talking too much or feeling frustrated or not being able to focus on schoolwork or homework. But don't worry, there's definitely lots of ways to help it. And, you know, one of those big ways is paying attention to what goes into our body and what you know, we're exposed to in the environment.
Wow. That was amazing.
Amazing.
Thank
So,
you.
son,
Oh, amazing.
What was the first thing that you did to help your child?
Yeah, that is a really, really good question. You know, like when doctors find out a kid has ADHD, they usually want to give them medicine right away. And, you know, but the cool thing about something, you know, that I learned after my son was given medication is that food can actually make a big difference. For my son, the medication didn't work the way that we'd hope. So what we did to start was we changed what he ate instead, and we took away foods that were making him feel bad, and not bad in a way, oh, I've got a sore stomach, or oh, you know, that hurts my head, but foods that can actually stop you focusing, can break down the gut. And I know we will talk about the gut in a second, and I'm sure you guys have talked about that a lot.
Mhm.
But things like something called gluten and something called dairy and artificial flavors and colors. Have you guys talked about those things on the podcast?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Now, these foods can make the brain and the belly upset. So we replace them with better, healthier foods. And it really started to work. My son, literally within 2 weeks, when we took out gluten and dairy and these artificial flavors and colors, he felt so much better. He could actually sit down at the dinner table for once in his life. His ADHD symptoms got lesser and lesser. And that's why I always say to everyone that I'm working with or speaking with, let's try fixing things with food first before jumping into all of these complicated strategies or jumping into medication, because it's just amazing how much good food can help.
Mhm.
so you're saying that artificial foods and processed foods could actually lead to ADHD?
Well, that's very, very interesting question that you're asking. Now, while they don't cause ADHD, they can cause ADHD-like symptoms. Okay, so those things like that hyperactivity. There are a lot of studies out there that have been done on artificial colors and ADHD, and it clearly shows the link between ADHD symptoms like hyperactivity and impulsivity being increased when a kid eats artificial food dyes. And so while those foods don't cause ADHD, I think a lot of kids out there are being diagnosed with ADHD when really they probably don't have traditional or true ADHD. It's just a lot of their symptoms look like ADHD symptoms, and they're not able to control their bodies, and they're not able to focus because their bodies are not feeling very good. Their brains are not being fed the way that they need to feel.
So let's talk now about gut health. So tell us
Yes.
more about, like you were saying, tell us more about how the gut can affect fixing ADHD.
Yeah, and I think that is like numero uno. And I know you guys have talked about gut a lot on this. You're like an expert. You're like the kids' expert for the microbiome. And so I just want to start off with some statistics. Okay, I told you I used to work with numbers, so I do like statistics. Now it's estimated that 54% of American children have been diagnosed with a chronic illness. This was in 2018 in a study that was done. And that figure was only 15% a few years before that. And when I look at that 15% to 54%, I think that's like huge. That's a massive increase. And so we're looking at that, we're thinking, 1 in 2 kids have something called anxiety or asthma or epilepsy or allergic conditions or learning disabilities, hyperactivity. 1 in 5 have allergies. 1 in 6 have developmental delays, and 1 in 32 have autism. I'm not sure if you've talked about autism before on the podcast. You have, yeah. But, we think to ourselves, well, why has that rise occurred so rapidly? And the answer is simple. It all begins in the gut. Now, you guys probably know, and your listeners who have heard you before talk about this, 80% of the body's entire immune system is within the gut walls. So there's lots of stuff going on. The connection between our health, our children's health is quite literally connected to everything that goes on in the gut. But when I speak to families, I ask them, has your kid been sick? Have they been on lots of antibiotics? Do they have diarrhea or constipation? And a lot of those kids have been on a lot of antibiotics. And now the way that antibiotics works is they actually kill the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And so a lot of percentage have. And, I actually wish that I kept sort of a tally of how many kids had been on antibiotics in the past, but they wreak havoc on the gut because many people or many kids have lasting changes that are going on to their good bacteria as well as they're getting rid of the bad bacteria as a result of taking antibiotics. So we've got these large amount of kids that have been on these antibiotics. And so that's compromising the gut. Now, I just want to tie gut health to the brain and ADHD, which is what your question was. So there's something called the gut brain connection. And what that means is, you've talked about it. You guys know I don't even need to be here. You could totally run this podcast without me.
So for the audience, you can talk about it. We love hearing it from you.
Awesome. What the gut brain connection means is basically our brains are deeply connected to our guts. And if our guts aren't functioning well, our brains won't be able to function well. And, one thing in particular, 95% of the body's serotonin, and I'll tell listeners what that means in a second, and 50% of the body's dopamine is made in the gut. So these are happy hormones. They make us feel good. They balance our emotions. They help our cognitive function. And, as I mentioned earlier with my son, he used to have a lot of big emotions and meltdowns. We call this something called emotional dysregulation, and it's a common symptom of ADHD. But most people don't realize that this emotional dysregulation or having trouble controlling that actually starts in the gut where those happy hormones are made. So if we work to fix the gut, we can get the body to produce those right amount of happy hormones. Now, the biggest thing with the gut and the brain and ADHD is the brain has many areas involved in gut function. The main area is the frontal lobe. And for those that are just listening and not watching, I'm pointing to the middle of my forehead, just, above my nose in the middle of my forehead. That's called the frontal lobe. And that area of the brain talks to the gut via two-way messengers, The frontal lobe is involved in things like focus and attention and planning and organizing, which are common symptoms that kids with ADHD struggle with. So, you know, if we can help optimize that gut-brain connection, our kids with ADHD, they can start to focus and they can start to pay attention. Now, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever felt funny feelings in your stomach or like butterflies because you guys were nervous about something? Maybe it was like
right.
Yeah.
school.
No.
What?
Never? Did you just say never? You felt that?
I don't know, maybe like a long time ago.
No, not everyone. You do not.
What about when we went on the stage?
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah, like you felt this funny thing in your stomach. Okay, well, that's a perfect example of the gut-brain connection. Our bodies are perceiving whatever we're nervous about as a stressful situation, and then our brains will trigger that raw emotion in the gut, and it results in those feelings of butterflies or feeling like nauseousness, or, you know, that's the brain talking to the gut. But the reverse is also true. Our guts talk to the brains as well. So when we have a messed up stomach, when we have less good bacteria, you know, and we've broken down in that gut tract, you know, that's called something called gut dysbiosis, and that creates this inflammation and that bad stuff, and it travels through that connection to the brain, and it reaches the brain, and then it stops you from being able to focus or have good memory, you know, a whole host of symptoms that seem like ADHD. So it's kind of like this highway. They're constantly talking to each other, sending messages back and forth. Now, where medication is prescribed for ADHD, it's often to treat the symptoms in the brain alone. But that medication does absolutely nothing about whatever might be going on in the gut.
Wow, you are so inspiring.
so boring.
You guys are inspiring, seriously.
Thank you very much. So, with a lot of people are wondering, you know, how can you help kids with ADHD thrive using other lifestyle factors? And is it possible?
It is 1000% possible. So I've seen it in my own son, who, as I said, he is thriving in life. He hasn't been on meds for years. He just started high school, grade 9, and, you know, he's been a straight A student for a number of years now. So it is totally possible. I've worked with over 1,300 other families who we've been able to help do the same thing. But, you know, for those just starting out, you know, there are so many strategies out there, but let's just start with what we're putting in our body first. You know, let's eat foods that make us feel good. The focus on yummy foods, fresh foods that really help our brain and our body feel awesome. I'm sure you guys have talked about it. Fruits, vegetables, they're like nature's candy, aren't they? You know, they give your body and your brain vitamins that help you think clearly, and they help you feel strong. Things like, you know, chicken and eggs and healthy fats from avocado or olive oils, they actually help your brain work at its best. Don't forget water. You know, you've got to drink plenty of water. Sorry, I should say
You need to drink.
Yeah, I should say water, not water. I do live in America, but I just can't get rid of that part of my accent. I don't know if I really want to anyway. But, you know, drinking plenty of water helps your body stay clean. It helps get rid of other bad stuff as well. You know, I could go on and on about all the different things that, you know, increase ADHD symptoms. But let's just start simple and slow, because I always say, I don't know if you guys have ever heard this saying, but Rome wasn't built in a day. Have you ever heard that saying?
Yes.
Yes, I've heard it.
Yeah, and what that means is you don't have to do everything on day one. We can take small, slow, you know, steps and start really slow. So let's start putting good stuff in our body. Let's start taking out the bad stuff so we can start thriving.
And I love how you said, you know, take it like one step at a time, basically. And people think, oh, how did you get your, you know, kids to eat healthy food? I mean, it didn't happen overnight, right? It took like year after year after year, one product, one kind of chemical, one kind of like organization at a time. First, we stopped eating like fast food. Then we got into artificial
No, not GMOs. No, first was gluten,
gluten, dairy.
and then the artificial, and then like we started looking at GMOs, and then now we're seeing in the organic and the natural flavors, and it's just keep
Yes.
on.
Over like 7 years, it took us to go from being like kids that drink Coke and Pepsi all the time to being what we are now.
Well, you guys are an inspiration to a lot of kids out there. And I can tell you that I work with a lot of kids and they think to themselves, you know, like, oh, I'm missing out, but they're not missing out at all. And I'm gonna send them to this podcast because I think that you're gonna be an inspiration to a lot of the kids that I work with, because that's exactly what I teach. And that's the first step. There are other things that we do, but let's just start small and easy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It was amazing. So you talk a lot about ADHD superpowers. What are those, and how can kids use these superpowers?
Yeah, 100%. Like kids with ADHD, they have some pretty amazing superpowers. Kids with ADHD, they often have this incredible creativity. Like, yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of something called hyperfocus. Okay, it's like this superpower where if they find something that they love, they can hyper focus on that and never give up, no matter how tough things get. Instead of just thinking about the challenges that ADHD brings, I say, let's also focus on the superpowers it gives you. Like every day, try to think of one thing you're really good at because of your ADHD. It could be creativity. It could be your energy. It could be how determined you are to get things done. And I think we should celebrate that as well. A lot of people think ADHD is all about challenges, like, as I said earlier, trouble sitting still or staying focused. But it's so important to remember that ADHD comes with some awesome superpowers too. Kids with ADHD, they're super creative. So, you might be the one in the art class who comes up with, a totally different idea no one else thought of. That's your creativity superpower. And if you've ever gotten really into something like building with Legos or learning about your favorite subject for hours, that's hyper focus kicking in. Your brain locks onto things you love and you become amazing at them. It also gives you like lots of energy and enthusiasm. So while other kids might get tired or often still, they're still ready, the kids with ADHD, to keep playing and keep having fun. That energy can light up a room and it can keep things exciting, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. What else? Kids with ADHD are often great problem solvers. They can look at challenges in a really unique way and come up with really clever solutions that others might not see. They're always super curious, always wanting to learn more about how things work. So, when you think about ADHD, I don't want to just focus on the tough stuff. I think the superpowers, that creativity, that hyper focus, energy, problem solving, they are what make kids that are listening, if they've got ADHD, that's what makes you special. And when you use them, you can do amazing things.
Yeah, so remember that ADHD is not a problem. It can actually be something that's beneficial for them, and you shouldn't always see it as something negative, because if you see it as something negative, it will be negative.
Yes,
it's all about gratitude.
Yes, definitely. And there are things that we can do to reduce the tough symptoms that come with it. So there, you've got some amazing superpowers, but at the same time, there are things that we can do to help with you with some of the challenges.
So what is one thing kids can do today, like right now, they can do to thrive with ADHD?
Like right now.
Like right now.
Like right now.
Yes.
I think let's start with breakfast. Let's start with breakfast because breakfast sets you up for your whole school day ahead. So let's, look at what are we currently eating for breakfast. And that's all you need to do. Let's talk to mum and dad, sit them down and say, look, we really need to focus on getting food into our body that is going to set us up for a successful day ahead. So rather than, having that sweet cereal, we can bring in some things that will give us much more brain power, whether that be eggs, whether that be, a
Blueberries.
chicken sausage, so really good protein, healthy fats, a smoothie. I'm sure you guys have talked about
Yes, we
smoothies a lot.
definitely
You
Yeah.
guys have a favorite smoothie?
had tons of smoothies.
Yeah. What's your favorite?
Well-
Actually, every single time it's different. Like
Ah,
our mom, so there's like tons and tons and tons of different varieties. Because like some days she puts like this new random exotic vegetable that no one's ever heard of.
that is amazing. And that is totally what I do as well. Like, when you get to that point, you just swap out the superfood for that day. And because you don't want to eat the same thing. And that's really where you want to get to. But I think, well, let's either start with breakfast. Let's set up ourselves up for our day ahead. We want that breakfast to have some really good protein, some really good healthy fats. If you're having a smoothie, you could even put a tablespoon of olive oil in it. That's going to give you some really good healthy fats that are going to feed your brain. But I want to say one thing. I mean, I love smoothies, and inside our program, when we work with kids, we have like a smoothie guide in there that's got like 100 different smoothies. But you don't have to have a green smoothie to start. Let's start somewhere really close to where you're currently at. And, just like you guys, 7 years later, we'll get to where you need to be. It doesn't need to be all on day one, but let's start, I think breakfast, or start with bringing in some smoothies into your daily life.
That is amazing.
Amazing.
So where can people learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. So my business is called ADHD Thrive Institute. So it can be found at www.adhdthriveinstitute.com, or I'm on Instagram at ADHD Thrive Institute, or on YouTube at, where do you think?
ADHD Institute.
ADHD Thrive Institute.
Thrive Institute,
Yeah. Basically, any social platform at ADHD Thrive Institute.
That was amazing.
Amazing.
Thank you again. We know you are super busy, so we're so thankful for your time.
I am so thank you for you guys inviting me here, and what you're doing is absolutely amazing. This has probably been the funnest podcast episode that I've ever been on, so I appreciate you so much.
Well, like we like to say, it's our pleasure.
It's our pleasure. So let's recap your points.
54% of all American children have been diagnosed with chronic health condition. There are things that we can do to help us kids to help them thrive, because it's not hopeless. There is hope. Your gut and your brain are connected. Your gut bugs can determine your health and brain health. So keeping your gut healthy, keeping your gut happy is key.
Start with what you're putting in your body, and start with breakfast. Take away foods that make you feel bad, and remove foods that can make your body feel upset, and add foods that will help your body. Gluten, dairy, and artificial foods, get rid of that stuff and add in fruits and vegetables. They're nature's candy, and help your body be strong. Add clean protein and healthy fats to help your brain function. Make sure you're drinking enough water. We love smoothies. We add all the veggies and fruits and even olive oil that we can. And also help your brain feel amazing.
Also, we love rainbow foods, because healthy food doesn't just have to be green. There's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. All the diversity is key, right, Zan?
Yes.
Instead of focusing on the negative focus on the ADHD superpowers. They are hyper-focused and creative. Remember, Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't have to do everything in one day. Put good stuff in, take bad stuff out. Take it one day at a time. You are all amazing.
And thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Miss Dana. This was so amazing, and so fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
So thank you everyone for tuning in. Until next time, I'm Zansari.
I'm Abdullah.
And I'm Imad.
Follow my family and I on social media, Holistic Mom D, and look out for my mom's book that came out last week, Adam's Healing Adventures: Fake Food versus Real Foods, which I actually illustrated.
They're really amazing illustrations. Definitely check them out.
And stay tuned to our book that we all wrote, The Teen Health Revolution, releasing 2025. Kids need to learn from other kids. Please download our podcast and iTunes and leave reviews so other kids and families can benefit. We need to create a healthy future for all of us and the planet. Join us next week for another episode of the Little Sick Kid Show, where kids are empowering kids.
Thank you, everyone.